Good evening, all of you. I'm Ankit, and you're watching the Indian Express analysis on StudyIQ IS English channel. And today is 24th of March, and we are going to discuss important news and articles that have been given in today's Indian Express newspaper. Now, we'll start our today's discussion with an article given in the Explain section, which highlights the protest which is going on in the state of Meghalaya. And this protest is against the Indian state entity known as the Indian Railways. And why are these Meghalaya people protesting against Indian Railways? Because they feel that the railway projects which are going to be implemented in that particular state, it will invite huge influx of outsiders into the state of Meghalaya. And the protesters have also highlighted that we are not principally against the Indian Railways. Rather, they want first of all the inner line permit system to be implemented in state, then only the central government can bring Indian Railways. So what is the issue in Meghalaya? What are the different lines that have been planned by the Indian Railways? And then what is inner line permit system? All of this we'll try to understand in our today's discussion, which becomes relevant from GS paper 3 perspective, particularly from the developmental and the security related perspective. Then in the second article, we'll be understanding the section 79 of the Information Technology Act of the year 2000, because this is the section of the act which is under the contention as the platform owned by Elon Musk known as X, which was formerly known as Twitter. This platform has taken Indian government to the Karnataka High Court, saying that the Indian government and its powers under section 79 has been misutilized, particularly to impose restrictions on the content which is posted on the platform X. So we'll try to understand how does government regulate different kind of an online content based on its power under our Information Technology Act 2000. And this also qualifies as an article relevant from polity perspective, because this on a broader level deals with the matters of fundamental right, that is right to freedom of speech and expression, which is part of Part 3 in the Indian Constitution. Also, these kind of articles, that is a legislation regulating the fundamental rights of our country, it is relevant from GS paper 2 perspective, that is the polity syllabus. Understood? So this is why we'll be understanding the second article. Then the third article, this appeared in the business page today, and it says that the Russian oil imports, which witnessed somewhat decline in the months of January and March, it has risen in the months of January and February. It has risen in the month of March. So we'll try to understand what are the reasons. First of all, why the imports from Russia, particularly the crude oil, it reduced in the months of January and February, and the reasons why it increased in the month of March. Now you have to understand, India was a marginal importer of the Russian oil before the Russia-Ukraine war. But there were many conditions that has happened after Russia went to its war with Ukraine, and that has promoted India to import more and more crude oil gradually from the country of Russia. So we'll try to understand this issue in general. What are the reasons why India is now importing Russian oil, and what are the reasons the Russian oil has, or its imports has witnessed a gradual rise in the month of March. Now this kind of an article, it becomes important from our energy security perspective, which is a part of economy, that is GS paper 3 syllabus. Understood? Now in the fourth article, we'll be understanding some details about the International Olympic Committee and why are we dealing something related to sports, because you can see previous year questions, UPSC has a tendency to ask sports related questions. Now not every sports related developments become important, but this kind of an important development that highlights that the new head of International Olympic Committee, or IOC, for the first time a woman has been elected as the head of IOC. So that is why this news becomes significant overall from a news perspective and also from our exams perspective. Now, technically, you can categorize this news as a miscellaneous news because it does not fall into the traditional papers of the UPSC. But we are going to discuss this event as a question might appear on similar topics. And also, International Olympic Body is a global body, so this becomes important also from GS paper 2 perspective, that is the perspective of international relation. Now the notions of power in general, earlier it was interpreted that a country is powerful just because it has military or an economic power, but now we are seeing gradually the countries are becoming more conscious about the softer approaches towards power, that is culture, sports, etc. As you can see, China has not just made great developments in the field of technology and other fields, but it has also focused a lot on sports. This tells you the fact that powerful countries now want to dominate each and every domain in the world, be it technology, be it military, economy, everything. This also includes sports. Understood? And then in our last article for the day, we'll be understanding some details about the festival of Navroz, which was celebrated recently, and this festival also coincides with the event of vernal equinox. So what is this vernal equinox? How does it relate to Navroz? All of this we'll try to understand. Now, why are we dealing with this particular topic? Because questions on the very basic concepts of geography, like what factors determine the length of our day and nights, etc., they have been asked thrice in the prelims examination. So the basic concepts of how equinoxes and the solstices happen, we need to understand in our today's discussion before we approach this year's prelims examination. Now, this kind of an article becomes important from GS paper 1 perspective, that is art and culture, that is the Navroz festival, and also the geography perspective, that is the vernal equinox. Understood? So these are the articles that we are going to discuss today, and the notes for this session will be available on my Telegram channel as usual after this session ends, and the link to the Telegram channel is ATS Live. So you can search the keywords ATS Live, or you can scan this QR code, which will take you directly to my Telegram channel. Now, good evening Lydia, Mohit, Yashi, Sarang, Augustine, Madison, Shushmita, Shweta, Gibson. Good evening, sir. Revolutionaries IAS Academy. Well, Revolutionary IAS Academy told me his name. I forgot his name because he's coming after a long time. Neha, Divya, good evening, everyone. Now, if I can recall, Revolutionary said something already. I can't recall. Can you please let me know your name again, Revolutionary? I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Now, this question, I believe we have done it. This was the yesterday's question that we picked up. Now, let us begin our today's discussion with this particular question. This article appeared in the explain section of the Indian Express newspaper. Now, this says that why some in Meghalaya are they opposing rail connectivity to the state. Now, this article in general highlights a concept called as inner line permit. So, we are going to discuss what is inner line permit. But before understanding what is inner line permit, let us take a brief understanding of this issue, or why is the demand for inner line permit originating in the state of Meghalaya. So, let us discuss this article. Now, the context of this article. Yes, Divyansh, now I recall your name. Okay. Now, the context of this article is actually after the years of opposition, the Khasi pressure groups are actually opposing any newer developments relating to rail connectivity in the state of Meghalaya. And because of this years of protest and opposition, the railway has now decided to shelve two key projects which connected the city of Brinyat, which is a major industrial location in the state of Meghalaya, very close to its border with Assam, with that of its capital known as Shillong. Now, this project in Meghalaya, it was to connect two important towns in Meghalaya. However, now this has been shelved because of the ongoing protest. Now, with this, the capital city of Meghalaya, that is Shillong, will be the only capital city in the country that does not have an active rail connectivity, or it does not also have a project which will connect it to the rail connectivity in near future. Understood? Now, not just protests related to this particular line, also the protest related to other line, it cropped up in the Jayantia Hills because of a recently sanctioned project which was to connect a major city in the Jayantia Hills, that is known as Jowai. So, let us understand, or let us try to understand first of all what were the major projects that were planned in the state of Meghalaya, and now why the peoples are protesting against this particular rail connectivity in the state of Meghalaya. Now, first, at the time of present, you have to understand Meghalaya, it only has one railway station, that is known as Mehendi Patthar. Now, Mehendi Patthar is located in North Garo Hills, and it has a train connectivity on a daily basis with the largest city in the northeast, that is Guwahati. Now, trains ply between Guwahati and Mehendi Patthar on a daily basis, and recently this station also witnessed first freight shipment last month only. So, that is why this is the only station currently located in the entire state of Meghalaya. Now, apart from this, Northeastern Frontier Railway, which is the division of railway responsible for the northeastern region, it had planned 3 new projects in the state of Meghalaya. First project was a 21.5 kilometer long project which was to connect the industrial town of Brynyath in Meghalaya with that of Tetlia located in Assam. Now construction of 19 kilometers worth of railway line on the Assamese side has been already completed, but the rest 2.5 kilometers on the Meghalaya side was not completed because of the protest ongoing in the state of Meghalaya. Also, the second line is that of connectivity between Brynyath, the industrial town located very close to the Assam border in the state of Meghalaya, with that of Shillong, which is the capital of Meghalaya, and this was to be around 109 kilometers long. Now, for this particular railway line, for the land acquisition purposes, the central government has given about 210 crore rupees to the state of Meghalaya for land acquisition purposes. But now, the Chief Minister of Meghalaya is highlighting that unable to acquisite the land for this particular railway line purposes, the government of Meghalaya is now considering to return this money to the central government as it has remained unused for about 7 years. And the third line, which was to be constructed, was between Chandranathpur in Assam to that of Jowai in the East Jaintia Hills. Now, these were the 3 lines that were proposed, but we are witnessing that all those 3 lines have been subjected to certain protests in the state of Meghalaya. Now, the rationale of the government to set up railway connectivity in the northeast, particularly in Meghalaya, was a economic rationale, because you understand connectivity of railway is very crucial to the economic viability of a northeastern state, as most of these northeastern states are somewhat less economically developed as compared to the states located in India's hinterland. Now, 75% of the population who are living in Meghalaya, they depend on small patchy agriculture, whereas the rest of the economy is service-based economy. So, in all, the manufacturing projects or manufacturing processes is happening in a very less amount in the state of Meghalaya and in broader context in the entire northeast. Now, to promote production of goods and services in the state, the government is proposing to connect Meghalaya and other northeastern states with the railway connectivity. Now, what railway would do is actually it will help reduce the transportation cost, because currently the entire transportation which is done in the northeast, including Meghalaya, it is done through the road sector or through road transport. But you understand, the northeastern is a hilly area, and so the road length is quite large as compared to the state entirely, and you have to spend a lot of time on road if you have to deliver goods and services through the road transport. But the time taken for delivery of goods and transport could have been significantly reduced once railway projects would have been connected in the state of northeast. So, railways in general will help mobilize productivity of the state by bringing the prices down, as due to road transportation and time taken for delivery of goods and services, which was quite more, the prices of goods that were available in the state of northeast was somewhat higher, and this led to inflation in the northeast. So, to bring down the inflation and to reduce the transportation cost, government was vying for railway connectivity, as it will reduce logistical cost, and in general it will benefit not just the masses of the people who are living in northeast, but in general it will also promote local entrepreneurs and businesses, because local entrepreneurs and businesses, they can start their business ventures, as the businesses would then flourish, and also it will lead to huge influx of tourists, because you understand northeastern states and particularly Meghalaya is a beautiful location. So, all of this railway connectivity will not just improve business opportunities, but it will also lead to influx of tourists. Now, this was the rationale of the government, why it wanted to connect northeast with that of railways. Now, let us consider what the local people are feeling about this project. Now, a student union known as Khasi Student Union, it has been opposed to the entry of railways in the state of Meghalaya since 1980s, and this group feels that the railway, once it will be implemented and the railways will bring people into the northeast, this will lead to huge influx of outsiders into the states such as Meghalaya. Now, in general, people of the northeast, they are very particular about their culture, their language, their heritage, and they don't want it to be watered down by the huge influx of outsiders who will bring their own culture naturally. So, this is a source of apprehension when it comes to people of northeast, and that is why people in general are quite suspensive or quite suspicious about this particular railway project, and this is the biggest cause of concern. Also, why are these groups opposing these projects in general? Now, there has been a long-standing demand in the state of northeast, particularly in Meghalaya, to implement an inner line permit system, also abbreviated as ILP. Now, this ILP system, it is currently in place in four northeastern states, that is Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Mizoram, and now it was also implemented in the state of Manipur. So these 4 states are under the regime of inner line permit. Now what is inner line permit? Inner line permit is a document which is issued by the state government and it is issued to Indian citizens. Suppose me, who is not a native of Northeast, if I want to visit these states who are under the inner line permit, I'll have to take the permission of state government, and state government, by issuing the permission, they will issue me a permit known as ILP. Now this ILP will allow me to enter these states, and also it will have a certain duration beyond which I can't stay in that particular state. So this highlights the permission. It gives you the permission to travel to these particular states, and it also states the duration based on which you can stay in these states. So that is why these kind of a permit system, it regulates the movement of outsiders, that is Indian citizens, into these areas, also known as protected areas. Understood? So this regulates the movement of outsiders into the protected area states. Now people of Meghalaya are also demanding that such inner line permit systems should also be applied or implemented in the state of Meghalaya. Now the student groups in general have highlighted. Now this is the map. These are the states that border Myanmar, that is Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur and Mizoram. These have inner line permit and system. Now people of Meghalaya, they are also demanding the inner line permit system. Understood? Now in general, what you have to understand, that these groups are saying that these groups are not in principally against the implementation of railways, because they understand the economic benefits out of it. But what they are afraid is that once these railway projects will be implemented without ILP, it will lead to huge influx of outsiders into the state of Meghalaya, and it will put the natives of Meghalaya, that is Garo tribes, Khasi tribes, etc., into minority, because in total these tribes are in about 24 lakh in numbers. Now once outsiders will enter the states, this 24 lakh of the natives of Meghalaya will be in minority, and this will tilt the entire economy, society and the polity of the state of Meghalaya. So this is what the people of Meghalaya are worried about. Now road travel in general, it can be checked. However, once there will be railway connectivity into the state of Meghalaya without ILP, it will lead to huge influx of foreigners. So that is why people of Meghalaya are saying that once there will be an ILP implemented in the state, it will allow the police and the local administration to set up checkposts there in the railway stations itself, and then it can regulate the movement of people in and out of the state. So that is why they want first the government to implement ILP, and then only the government can think about bringing the railways into the state of Meghalaya. Understood? Now with this information, let us try to solve this particular question. Let me see who all have understood this particular question. Please let's solve this question quickly. Okay, Divyansh, you disappeared due to some family issue. I hope that family issue has been resolved. Sarang, as usual, first to answer, says option B. Anyone else? Which one is correct? Shushmita says option B. Baga Jatin says option B. Madison B. Well, which of the following states in India require an inner line permit for entry by outsiders? Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, yes. Tripura, not, as these 4 other states which have ILP system in place, whereas Tripura, Meghalaya, etc., they have not. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is correct. Option B is the right answer. Yes, all of you are correct. Neha, Yashi, Divyansh, Gibson, Mohit, Lydia, Madison, Shweta, Neha, Baga Swings, all of you are correct. Yes. Now let's move to the second article of the day. This article actually I've borrowed from the explain section of the Indian Express. I think this news article appeared in the newspaper on Saturday. Now this article states that the platform X, which was formerly known as Twitter, and now it is owned by Elon Musk, who is a very close confidant of President of United States. This platform has challenged the Indian government into the Karnataka High Court, saying that Indian government is misusing its power under Section 79 of IT Act. So this is the context of our today's discussion. Now the article, it itself highlights that the government has the power to regulate content on social media under the Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, because if you can recall, under Article 19, it states the citizens of India have right to freedom of speech and expression, but this is not an absolute right. Rather, this is a qualified right which allows the government to impose certain kind of restrictions known as reasonable restrictions. So we'll understand what or what are reasonable restrictions. So in total, you have to understand that this fundamental right available to people of India, this is not an absolute right that you can't go on and say anything or anything about anyone. This has to be regulated by some facts which we'll understand in our today's discussion. Now, this kind of restrictions on the freedom of speech and expression, it exercises or it is exercised by the government in various domains. In the field of information technology, it is regulated by the Information Technology Act 2000. Now, the company, that is X, it has argued that the government is misusing its power given under the various provisions of IT Act to regulate the content posted on the social media platforms like X. So this is the context of our today's discussion. Now let us understand there are various sections given in the IT Act 2000 which allows the government to regulate content or even allow government to punish people who are providing false information on the social media. Now first article which is or first section of this particular act which is in news or which was in news was section 66 of the IT Act. Now this section 66 of the IT Act which was in application before, it allowed the government to criminally punish any individual for publishing or providing false information for the purposes of causing annoyance or inconvenience. So this indeed was a power of government to restrict any speech or any kind of an tweet or content which is posted on social media by individuals. Now this became a huge cause of controversy when a person known as Shreya Singhal was imprisoned by the government of Maharashtra, and this matter reached the apex court of the country, that is Supreme Court of India. Now Supreme Court of India in its judgment under the Shreya Singhal versus Union of India case in 2015, Supreme Court highlighted that this particular provision was unconstitutional and void because it was very vague in nature, as the government had a very large power to restrict, or it had an unchecked power to restrict freedom of speech and expression, which is not according to Article 19 of the Constitution, because Article 19 of the Constitution says government only under certain conditions can impose restrictions on free speech. That government is also restricted by the law or by the Constitution. It can't check any speech which is given by the person on social media. So according to the Supreme Court, this section 66 of the IT Act was unconstitutional and void, and hence it made this particular provision redundant. Understood? Now after this particular judgment, the main authority on the central government to regulate content on social media is now vested under section 69 of the IT Act. So this is a primary law which gives government the power to regulate content on social media. Now this allows the central government to issue order on blocking any information which is generated, transmitted, received, stored or hosted in any computer resource. But unlike 66A or section 66A, this contains certain safeguard on whether or not government can misuse this power or not. So it imposes certain restrictions even on the government, that it can't use this power only on its whims and fancies, that only in certain conditions it can use powers under the section 69 of the IT Act. Now to block any content under section 69 of the IT Act, the government will have to first highlight that this action by the government to regulate that content is absolutely necessary. And what makes that decision absolutely necessary? That any content which threatens or it threatens the interest of sovereignty, integrity of India, security of the state, friendly relations of India with any foreign country, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, defamation and incitement, only under these particular conditions can government impose restrictions on any content given on the social media website. So in general, section 69 of the IT Act, it allows government to restrict actions on freedom of speech and expression based only on the conditions of reasonable restrictions. Understood? And what are reasonable restrictions? That any content which violates these kind of provisions, which is again qualified under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, then only government can block these content on social media websites. So this is section 69A, that government is allowed to block certain content on the social media website, but not every content can be blocked. Only content that violates these provisions can be blocked by the government. Understood? Now the Supreme Court in Shreya Singhal case, it clarified that the application of section 79, what is section 79 now? Now section 79, it actually allows the IT companies or the social media platforms the provision of safe harbor. It says that any social media company like Instagram, like Twitter or X for that matter, these are allowed to post any content given by the users like you and I. So technically, users, suppose I make any tweet on the website of X. Now, if that tweet is actually against the section 69A of the IT Act, so the government can't penalize the platform for that content, because according to the safe harbor provision, the company or the platform based on which I am posting the particular tweet or particular content on that website or that platform is not liable for any content posted by a private individual like me. Rather, this matter is between me and the government can't punish platforms like X for certain content. But this content, according to section 79, should not be edited by the platform or should not be curated by the platform, right? So suppose if I put any tweet on the platform X, you understand platform X can't change that tweet. So therefore, platform X won't be criminally liable for any content posted by me on the internet. So this is safe harbor provision. It is mentioned in section 79 Act of the IT Act. Now, Section 79 subsection 3 states that the platforms such as X, Instagram, these are intermediary platform. They can be held liable in certain cases. Suppose government orders removal of certain content on these websites, and if these websites don't pay heed to the government order, then government can act against these platforms for not removing the content which is a criminal content posted on their website. So these Section 79 Act, it provides safe harbor provisions to certain platforms, but these safe harbor provisions is only applicable when these platforms do not edit or curate any content which is posted on their platform. And in addition, they also have to pay attention to government's direction on whether to remove that content or not. And if they fail to remove that content which is given through a government order, that is a criminally liable offense. Understood? Now, section 79, it is actively used by government these days to regulate content on the social media. Now, Supreme Court actually limited the scope of this provision, ruling that the requirement under section 79 subsection 3 will only kick once a court has passed an order, and also government issues a written notification stating that the content on the website which is in question, it is related to grounds provided under the article 19 subsection 2 of the constitution, that is reasonable restriction. So only in these two cases can government issue an order to the platforms to remove such content from their website. Understood? So Supreme Court in Shreya Singhal case regulated the use of government's power even under article 79. Now, in that regard, government has issued, that is Ministry of IT, it has issued a directive to all ministries, state governments and police, saying that information blocking orders can be issued under section 79 subsection 3, and for that it provided a portal known as Sayog where these authorities can issue and upload the blocking orders. So, according to platform X, it has reached to the Karnataka High Court. It is saying that government is attempting to bypass the multiple procedural safeguards with this Supreme Court has applied under the section 79A, also given under the section 69A, and it states that the Supreme Court ruling in Shreya Singhal, it regulated the government's use of such powers, but government is misusing such powers by resorting to section 79 to block content which is available on social media. So, according to platform X, this use of power of the government to remove content under section 79A, it merely exempts intermediaries for liability, and therefore intermediaries are not liable to follow government orders. Rather, it is only liable to follow court's order if they have to remove any content through the social media. And this platform X highlighting that this government's measure actually violates your fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression. Good evening, Achal. Good evening, Rishav. So this is entire discussion about the section 79A. Now, why are we discussing this particular section in our today's discussion? You have to understand that this petition of the platform X comes at a very crucial time, because last week we saw the AI chatbot of platform X known as Grok. It quoted many controversy because it responded quite critically of the government, and also it responded in profanity which again violated the very decency in public. Now this Grok controversy introducing a very new angle when it comes to safe harbor provision under section 79I. Now I told you, right, if an private individual like you and I, if we post something on platforms like X, then we are liable for that content, and platforms like X are not liable or not criminally liable for that content because they had nothing to do with that particular content, because it was solely provided by us on the platform and they are just intermediaries and hence not criminally liable. Now this is quite a different angle, because now Grok is a AI chatbot which was developed by Platform X, and when it is posting any content which is might be criminally incriminating, so in that case whether or not these platforms will be liable to get prosecution or safety from the prosecution under safe harbor. So this is the question which will appear in the news again. So we'll be discussing this particular controversy in a separate video. I'll post the link in my Telegram channel, so please do not worry about that. Now let's see if you can solve this particular question. Consider the following statements about section 79 of the IT Act. It grants intermediaries immunity from user generated content if they follow legal conditions. Yes, this is correct. What are the legal conditions? That they can't edit anything which is posted on the internet, and in that case the platforms, they are immune from the government's criminal prosecution. Now the safe harbor, it is applicable if the intermediary edits and curates the user content. This is incorrect. I told you safe harbor is applicable only in that case if the intermediary does not change the content which is posted by the individuals like you and I. Okay, so section 79 or statement 2 is incorrect. Intermediaries, they lose protection if they ignore court and government order to remove this content. Yes, this is correct. I told you there are 3 different subsections of the section 79 subsection 3. First states that the safe harbor provision, second states that this safe harbor provision is applicable in case they don't edit such content, and third says that in case government or court highlight them to remove such contents, they have to follow this order, and in that case they will not be criminally liable. So third is correct, first is correct, second is not. We have to identify correct is right, and therefore option B is the right answer. Sarang, Baga, Yashi, Shushmita, Divyansh, Gibson, all of you are right. Shweta, please take a look again at the question. Yes, Baga Spinks, no accountability from apps overall, sir. Regulation and filtering should be mandatory. Helps down, narrow, antisocial, etc. Yes, you're correct. Neha, yes, also you're correct with this. Now, as I tell you every day, the matters which are related to government's regulation and on a broader context, the nuances of fundamental right, you have to understand that in detail before appearing in the prelims and mains examination. Now, our Sampoorn batch, which offers teaching for every important subject in the UPSC syllabus, also deals in detail with the fundamental rights in the polity classes, right? So for that, students who are having trouble in understanding the various articles of the Indian Constitution, what is fundamental right, how it is different from DPSP and fundamental duties, all of these concepts are taken care of in the Sampoorn batch, and a new batch is starting from today, that is 24th of March. It started actually in the morning. You have missed out on that, but you can still take admission for these classes. You can watch the first session in a recorded medium, and from tomorrow onwards you can attend the live lectures also. Now, to get admissions for that particular classes, what you can do is go to our websites, create an account here, click on explore courses. As soon as you click on explore courses, there will be a tile which will appear in front of you. Now make sure to go to UPSC IAS English. Here the first tile is for the March morning batch, which actually started from today. Click on this particular tile and you can see the course right now is available at 37,499 rupees. But let me tell you a way where you can get discounts even on this amount. Now in the bottom half of your screen, you might be seeing a particular ticker which says use the code ATS Live to get maximum discounts, right? So click on buy now here. After you click on buy now, there will be a option to add promo code. Click on this. Here you have to enter a coupon code and here enter, type ATS Live and click on apply. As soon as you click on apply, see there is a discount now at 7,499 and the course is now available at 29,999, which is the lowest amount which you will get on our StudyIQ platform, and this you are only getting because you are applying the code ATS Live. Understood? So this is how you get discounts for the maximum discounts that are available on our platform by using the code ATS Live, and please make sure to get your admissions because the date is ending now. Now let us move to another article. This one actually appeared in the business paper of the Indian Express newspaper, that is on today on page 11. Now this article deals with GS paper 2, GS paper 3, particularly GS paper 3. Why? Because it deals with matters related to import of an important commodity, that is crude oil. Now India in general, it meets the domestic demand for its crude oil by importing huge numbers of crude oil from various markets. Now these days Russia has emerged as a very good market for us to import crude oil because of its cheap crude oil. Now this article actually appeared in today's newspaper because in the months of January and February we saw the imports of crude oil from Russia witnessed a decline, but in the months of March it has recovered sharply thanks to the plentiful availability of Moscow's oil, which is trading at a price below the Western cap price. Now in our today's discussion we'll understand why was Western price cap implemented and how it allowed India to import a huge amount of crude oil at a much cheaper price at the time when the prices of crude oil in the global market were quite high. Now this has ensured that enough availability of the non-sanctioned tankers at the Russian disposal to actually transport these crude oil from Russian places to Indian ports, and that is why the India has witnessed an uptick in the import of Russian crude oil. Now this is the share of Russia in India's oil imports. You can see after the Russia-Ukraine war, it has reached to an extent of about 37 to 38% of total Indian crude oil imports. Now in months of January and February, it fell down to 33 and 30% respectively, but now you can see in March 2025, it has witnessed an uptick. Now it is 35.2%. Understood? So this is directly from our today's newspaper. Now in our today's discussion, let us take a very brief background on this issue, why actually India started to import oil from Russia. Now India is world's third largest consumer of crude oil, and to meet its domestic demand, India has to import a lot of crude oil, which averages about 85% of its total requirement. Now there are news in the newspaper, it says that in some months India has imported as much as 88% of its domestic requirement, but you have to remember one fact which is important, that in general on a year-to-year basis, India imports on an average about 85% of its total crude oil requirement. Now, before the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia was a very marginal supplier of crude oil to India because of its distance from Indian ports. However, after Russia went into its war with Ukraine, Western countries led by US imposed many economic sanctions on Russia to cripple its ability to earn money, which it can eventually use in the war. Now, one of these economic sanctions meant that Russia can't export crude oil beyond the cap of $60 per barrel. So this was a sanction which was imposed on Russia. Now because of this sanction, Russia could not import its crude oil or export its crude oil in larger numbers to other countries, and hence in overall demand, the Russian crude oil, it witnessed a fall down in the prices. Now when the prices of Russian crude oil, it reduced substantially as compared to the global prices of crude oil, it allowed India, or then India saw an opportunity and it started to import huge crude oil from the Russian markets. Now in 2024 in general, you have to understand Russian oil, it accounted for nearly 38% of India's total import of crude oil. Then that is why these kind of developments becomes important from our exams perspective. Now one of the reasons why I told you why Western countries impose sanctions on Russia, because for Russia, export of natural gas and crude oil is a very big source of revenue, and technically whatever Russian government is making money out of these exports, it could divert these money to make war against Ukraine. So to prevent such instances from happening, the Western countries imposed a lot of economic sanctions on Russia. One of this sanction was that Russian government can't export crude oil, or even if it is exporting crude oil above the prices of $60 per barrel, it can't use Western shipping and insurance facilities for that. So the idea was to cap or to limit Russia's revenue while it was fighting its war with Ukraine. But on the other hand, the Western countries knew that if they stop Russia from exporting crude oil altogether, it will lead to huge supply crunch in the global market of crude oil, and this could create problems even for Western countries. So they took a middle path, that they imposed a certain price related sanction on Russia, that in case it was exporting crude oil beyond $60 per barrel, it can't use the facilities, tankers, insurance facilities provided by the Western nations. So this was the reason of putting a price cap on Russia. Now India technically it was not a part of this sanctions regime against Russia, but in general, Indian companies, it trades with Russia, but it also trades with Western countries. So Indian companies were afraid from Western sanctions, and that is why they tried to keep an arm's length from the Russian companies in general, that they tried everything to do legally, not to engage in with Russia in terms of crude oil trade illegally. So this was the background of this issue. Now, in general, you have to understand what, let me tell you a very way, that West imposed certain price cap on Russian crude oil, right? This price cap was that of $60 per barrel. So in that case, if the prices of Russian crude oil, if it was less than $60 per barrel, so in that case, Russia, it can use Western tankers and it can use insurance facilities provided by the Western financial institution. But in case Russia tried to export crude oil at a price above $60 per barrel, so in that case, it can't use tankers and insurances which emerge from Western countries. So this was the idea of putting a price cap on the Russian crude oil. So technically, Russian crude oil was allowed to be entered into a market, but they have to be below certain price levels. Now, in that case, in order to surpass or meet this particular kind of shortcoming, what Russia used to do, that it engaged a shadow fleet of tankers, which was an older tankers or private based tankers, which were Russian in origin, but technically these shadow tankers, they were outside the control of the Western regime, and hence these shadow fleet of tankers, they were used to export huge amount of Russian crude oil to markets like India and China. So this was the sanctions, that earlier it excluded the Russian shadow fleet, and hence India and even China used these shadow fleets of tankers to import huge Russian oil. But during the time the Biden administration was outgoing, it imposed sanctions even on the shadow fleet of tankers. So now, if the Russian crude oil was above $60 per barrel, they technically can't use Western oil tankers. Now, even they can't use the shadow fleet of tankers. So this created a condition when countries like India, they were not able to import Russian crude oil when it was above the price level of $60 per barrel, because Western sanctions even made sanctions on the shadow fleet of tankers. Now, because of these Biden administration sanctions, India's Russian oil imports, it reduced certainly. Now, these sanctions initially made it difficult for Indian refiners to secure enough cargoes for Moscow's crude oil, as they were unwilling to deal with sanctions vessels and insurers. But as the prices of Russian crude oil now have slipped below the Western cap of $60 per barrel, so this means now to source Russian oil, Indian companies can use Western tankers and insurance facilities, and it will not be a cause of concern for Western countries. So this use of Russian tankers or even the Western tankers now has allowed India to meet its crude oil imports from Russia without even changing or without even having problems with Western sanctions. Now, in general, India's crude oil imports from Russia has shown no signs of structural retreat. Because of the certain sanctions, India saw lesser amount of imports in months of January and February, but now these concerns have alleviated and the prices of Russian crude oil has become lesser than $60 per barrel. That is why now India can technically import, and that is why you have seen there's an uptick in the Indian crude oil imports from Russia. Now, moderation in imports of Russian oil was seen in January and February, but it was likely a transitional logistical issue, not a ideological based issue from the Indian government. Now, there are some comments. Let me see. How is country bound to follow and respect a sanction, sir? Well, I told you, right, Indian companies, they not just trade with Russia, they also trade with West. So technically, if Indian countries, they were involved in trades with Russia, and if they were violating the conditions of US based sanctions, so technically US government can impose sanctions on Indian companies that it can't trade with Western companies. So technically this will actually go against the Indian economic principles of the Indian companies, right? It will hamper their businesses in West. So that is why they were afraid of violating the sanctions of the US based regime, because they were having significant business interest in the Western countries. Understood? Now, in general, why is India continuing with crude oil imports from Russia? There has to be certain reasons, right? There are many actually. Now, Russia's flagship crude oil, which is known as Ural crude oil grade, it continues to trade at a significant discount as compared to the rival grades of countries where India has historically imported crude oil, like Middle Eastern nations, West African nations. Now, although discounts have actually shrunk considerably over time, but still these oils are available at a significant discount, which makes Indian companies actually a lucrative deal for Indian refiners to import these oils, as India meets a significant demand of domestic demand of crude oil from imports. Now, Indian refiners, they are well configured for medium sour grades like Urals, which can be blended and processed directly, and therefore these Indian refinery companies, state-owned companies, private companies, they are using Russian crude oil in larger numbers to make oil products and then meet its domestic demand and also export it to global markets. Now, the reason behind why India is importing Russian crude oil is purely economics. It is not politics, because naturally whenever a commodity is available at a discounted prices, why won't you source that particular kind of commodity? Understood this analysis? Now, let us move to another article. This article also appeared in the Indian Express newspaper and states that Christy Coventry has actually emerged as a winner of the International Olympic Committee polls, and therefore she has become the first ever women president of the, or women chairperson of the International Olympic Committee, and that is why we are dealing with such kind of a news article. Now, what is International Olympic Committee? It is a supreme authority which deals with matters related to how Olympic Games are organized, how they are promoted worldwide, and it was founded back in 1984. Now, the headquarters of this International Olympic Committee is located in the Lausanne city of the Switzerland. Understood? Now, the structure of IOC is that it is headed by a president who is appointed or who serves on an 8-year term. With this term is also renewable for 4 more years. Now, the current president, that was Miss Christy Coventry from Zimbabwe. She is the first woman and also the first African to lead this particular prestigious institution. Now, in addition to the president, this IOC or International Olympic Committee also consists of 100 plus members, which includes members of royalty, heads of state, athletes, business leaders, etc. Now, you have to remember, these members serve as a trustee of the Olympic movement, not as a representative of their restrictive or respective countries. For example, from India, the IOC member right now is Mrs. Neeta Ambani, who heads the Reliance Foundation, and as Reliance Foundation has a significant interest in the sports sector also, it has representing many athletes. Therefore, Mrs. Neeta Ambani is one of the members of the International Olympic Committee. Now, Mrs. Neeta Ambani is not a representative of India, rather she is a representative of Reliance Foundation. Understood? Now, in addition to members also, there is an executive board which consists or which oversees the daily operations of IOC. It consists of president, 4 vice president and 10 other members. Whereas for different various purposes, there is a commission and committees which is constituted in the state of, in the International Olympic Committee, and these commissions are focusing on issues like athlete welfare, ethics, governance, anti-doping policies, etc. Similar to the way that parliamentary committee works. Understood? Now, there are upcoming Olympics. You have to remember where the upcoming Olympics will be hosted. It was hosted in Paris in 2024. It will be hosted in 2026. That is, Winter Olympics will be hosted in Milan Cortina. The Summer Olympics in 2028 will be hosted in the city of Los Angeles of US. Whereas in 2032, it will be held in Australian city of Brisbane. Now, currently the venue of 2036 Olympics is not decided. However, Prime Minister Modi has said that India is in contention or wants to bid to host the 2036 Summer Olympics. Understood? Now, let's try to solve this particular question. Consider the following statements about International Olympic Committee. It is responsible for organizing the Olympic Games and promoting the values of Olympism worldwide. Correct. The IOC president serves as a 5-year term which can be renewed for another 5 years. It is incorrect. He or she serves at a 8-year tenure which can be renewed for another 4 years. Now, IOC members act as an official representative of their respective countries in the committee. I told you incorrect. They are not the official representatives. Hence, third statement becomes incorrect. Second is also incorrect. Only first one is right. We have to identify correct statement. So, option A is right. Yes, Shushmita, you are correct. Moving to the last article of today, this is actually two articles. First one appeared in the PIB, that is Prime Minister has greeted everyone on Navroz, and the second one is Spring Equinox. Now, why I've actually put two different screenshots of articles in one particular context? Because you have to understand these two articles are related. How they are related, let me tell you. Now, the festival of Navroz, which was celebrated or also known as Navroz, it is a Persian New Year and it marks the beginning of the spring of the northern hemisphere. Now it is usually celebrated on March the 28th and 21st and it aligns with the spring equinox, and that is why I put the both of the two screenshots on the same page. That spring equinox is also known as vernal equinox. Understood? Now, about this particular festival, it is associated with the Parsi religion, that is the founder of Parsi religion, Zoroaster, who founded the Zoroastrianism, and this festival has been celebrated for over 3000 years. Now, also UNESCO has introduced or included Navroz in its representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity back in 2009, and it was introduced in India during the time of Delhi Sultan or the rule of Delhi Sultan, that was Balban. So these are the important facts related to Navroz festival, and I told you the celebration of Navroz coincides with the spring equinox, also known as vernal equinox. So in this regard, let us try to understand what are or what in the hell is equinoxes. Now you have to understand the Earth, it revolves around the sun, but in the manner in which the Earth revolves around the sun is not in an upright manner, rather the axis of the Earth is tilted towards and away from the sun by the degree of 23.4 degrees. Now this tilting of Earth towards or away from the sun determines the length of our day and night. Otherwise, if the Earth would have been upright like this in front of the sun, then the length of the day and night would have been equal everywhere in the globe. But as we know, during the summer, the length of the day is larger as compared to the days during winter. Therefore, let us try to understand how this tilt towards or away from the sun at a certain degree changes the way in how our days and nights are determined right across the year. Now, in a very 2D mode, let me tell you this. Suppose this is the Earth and this is the equator of the Earth. Now, towards the north, you can see there is a Tropic of Cancer, and towards the south, there is Tropic of Capricorn. Now, in the north, there is North Pole. Similarly, in the south, there is South Pole. Understood? Now, as the Earth's axis is tilted towards or away from the sun at 23.4 degrees centigrade, 23.4 degrees, therefore, technically, the sun, it does not go beyond the Tropic of Cancer and it does not go beyond the Tropic of Capricorn. So, technically, all around the year, in terms of the sun, when it is above the horizon, it does not go north of Tropic of Cancer and it does not move beyond south of Tropic of Capricorn. So, whenever the sun is above the equator, the length of days and night, it is equal across the globe. However, during the months of summer, whenever the sun moves north of equator, at the highest point during June 20th or 21st, it is in the northmost position directly above the Tropic of Cancer, and this position is known as solstice. During the solstice in the northern hemisphere, it is known as northern solstice. The days, it is at the longest time in the northern hemisphere, whereas the night, it is the shortest. Similarly, whenever the sun is at southmost point directly above the Tropic of Capricorn, it is known in northern hemisphere perspective, it is known as winter solstice, and during winter solstice in northern hemisphere, the days are the shortest whereas the nights are longest. Understood the difference? So technically in 2D perspective, the sun, it does not move northern or it does not move beyond north of Tropic of Cancer, and it does not move southernmost or it does not move beyond south of the Tropic of Capricorn. Understood this very basic concept that I have told you? So in that way, the equinoxes, these are when the sun appears directly above the equator at noon, and at this time of the day, the length of day and night across the Earth, it is of equal length. Now in the northern hemisphere, during equinoxes, it is known as vernal or spring equinoxes, and this typically occurs between March 19 and 21, whereas the autumn equinoxes, it happens during September 21st or between 21st and 24th of September. Now we are considering all of this from northern perspective. So in northern perspective, whenever sun is on the equator between March and 19 and 21, it is known as vernal or spring equinox. When it is above the equator between 21st of September and 24th, it is known as the autumnal equinoxes. And this is actually reversed in cases of southern hemisphere, that during southern hemisphere between March 19 and 21, it is called as autumn equinox, and opposite in cases of September. Understood? Now, what is solstice? I told you solstice marks the day when earth is extremely tilted towards or away from the sun, and it is at the time when sun is either above Tropic of Cancer or Tropic of Capricorn. Now, in summer solstice in northern hemisphere, this happens when sun is directly above the Tropic of Cancer, and it is when the northern hemisphere has longest day and the shortest night of the year, and this happens between June 20th and 22nd. Whereas converse is true in cases of the winter solstice, that when sun is directly above the Tropic of Capricorn, from northern hemisphere perspective, the length of the night is longest, whereas the length of day is shortest. And the reverse is true in cases of southern hemisphere. Understood? If you have any doubt, you can ask me. And why are we dealing with such topics? Because you can see there are 3 PYQs in the UPSC. In 2013, there was a question: variations in the length of day and night time from season to season are due to what? The reason says the revolution of earth on a tilted axis. Now in 2019, on 21st of June, the sun, it is directly above Tropic of Cancer, and it therefore option D is incorrect. It is not directly above Tropic of Capricorn, and it does not set below the horizon of Arctic Circle. There is also one fun fact, that whenever sun is directly above the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere, then the sun does not set in the Arctic Circle. That in Arctic Circle during June the 21st of summer solstice, there is day for the 24 hours. That sun does not set. Okay, so the option A is the right answer for this 2019 PYQ. Whereas for 2022 PYQ in northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year normally occurs during when? In the second half of the June. Therefore, option B is the correct. So that is why we were dealing with this particular topic, which is very relevant from a UPSC perspective, because 3 questions have appeared on this topic. Understood? Now, what is the significance of spring equinox for different cultures? You have to understand that like Navroz, many other festivals are also celebrated based on the spring equinox. Now, in ancient Babylonian calendar, it began with first full moon following the March equinox. Therefore, it is a tradition which has been carried forward in many cultures, which celebrates the new year in the springtime. For example, the vernal equinox day, it is a national holiday in Japan. Similarly, in Jewish calendar, there is a festival known as Passover, and this is the Jewish festival which begins in the first full moon, which follows the vernal equinox. And after the first full moon of the vernal equinox, the first Sunday, which happens after the first full moon, this first Sunday, it is actually the Sunday when Christians celebrate the holy day of Easter. This day was when Jesus was actually resurrected from the dead. So this is why this spring equinox is very significant for certain religions. Similarly, the autumn equinox is also very significant. The autumnal equinox, it sees observance of autumnal harvest festivals such as Chuseok, which is actually celebrated for 3 days in Korea. Similarly, there is a Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are Jewish festival, and these are also celebrated according to the autumnal equinox. For example, Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish New Year, it is calculated 163 days from the first day of Passover, while as Yom Kippur, it is celebrated on the Day of Atonement. It is usually observed 10 days after the Rosh Hashanah festival. Understood? So this is how you have to understand important geographical developments and their relations with the different art and culture of many regions. Understood? Now, let's see if you can solve this question. Now, I've curated this question very similar to a question which appeared in 2017. The question which appeared in 2017 was related to the festival celebrated in different parts of the country, and I've curated this question you have to consider following with traditions which is celebrated by certain communities. Now, please solve this question quickly. Now, Rosh Hashna, it is actually a Jewish festival. Passover, also a Jewish festival, not a Christian festival. Chuseok, it actually is celebrated by the Koreans, not Japanese. Navroz is actually celebrated by Parsis, also known as Zoroastrian. So correct. So second and third incorrect, first and fourth are right. How many of the pairs given above are correctly matched? The option to this question is option B. So this brings the end of our today's session. The notes for this session will be available on the Telegram channel ATS Live. You can scan this QR code, and this is the practice question for your day, which I have curated a very similar question as compared to the PYQ of 2020, because in PYQ of 2020 a question appeared that what is Western Texas Intermediate, which has happened in the news. So similarly, what are Urals, as they have appeared in the news frequently? So please let me know the correct answer in the comment section. I'll wait for your answer, and this brings our end to our today's session. I'll see you again.